Okay, I'll take us live on channel 22 right now.
And we are live on YouTube.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the December 17th Litchfield Budget Committee meeting. I will call the meeting to order and we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Put my flag down here. All right, next up, public input, please.
Mr. Chair, I don't see any members of the public attending tonight.
Okay, great. Thank you, Mr. Burnell. Appreciate that. We'll move into review additions to tonight's agenda. Any changes or additions from the committee members, please? Okay, hearing none. We'll shift gears into correspondence. I do have a summary of correspondence to read as in past weeks. Ms. Forty, please keep me honest. On December 11th, Mr. Izabicki sent updated school documents to the Budget Committee. On December 11th, there was a town budget report, the weekly report that was circulated. On December 11th, there was a library request for heating oil increase of $313.25, and we're going to talk about that this evening. On December 13th, there was amendments to the December 3rd minutes by Ms. Forty that were circulated. And then on December 14th, the Budget Committee actually received an email from Mr. Jim Norton on his disappointment on the approach to the school budget reductions. And so that was circulated to the committee. On December 15th, there was a circulation of the December 17th meeting agenda. On December 15th as well, there was updated budget requests from the library for an employee who had a request to change insurance benefits, and this will be an increase to health and dental for an employee in next year's budget. More to come on that later this evening. On December 16th, Mr. Burke, you requested the town budget info be shared with you on Google Sheets. I sent you the link. Hopefully you were able to obtain access to that. And then you are good. Thank you. On December 17th, Michelle, you had circulated the updated reports from Dr. Jetty as well as Mr. Izabicki, along with the draft warrant articles to be reviewed this evening. And then also a little bit earlier today, Michelle, I know you had circulated cost per pupil, which is also going to be shared by the school this evening. I think that covers it. Did I miss anything? I'm seeing no's. All right, cool.
Well, the town warrant article draft that was submitted.
Yes, that actually just came in about 20 minutes ago, so thank you. Yes, we're also going to be reviewing the town warrant articles. Town Administrator Brown did circulate that to the committee, and that's in scope for tonight as well. Thank you. Next up in the agenda, we have our review and acceptance of the December 3rd minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review? Are we okay with the amendments as presented by Ms. Forty? So I'll entertain a motion, please.
So,
motion by Mr. Leary. Is there a second?
second.
Second by Mr. Sun. Further discussion? All those in favor of approving the amended minutes for December 3rd, I'll do a roll call vote. Let's see who I see first. I see Mr. Burke first.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Leary?
Yes.
Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Ms. Forty? Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
I am an aye. Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
And I don't believe Mr. Hodgkins or Ms. Douglas have joined yet. So motion passes 7-0-0. Okay, next up is moving into reports. Tonight's presentations are going to be for both the town and the school as a summary of the draft warrant articles for consideration from the Budget Committee. And with that, I will turn it over to Mr. Brown to get us started tonight.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead here and share my screen and if we can get these warrant articles up. Is you should be seeing them at the.
Yes.
Oh.
Thank you.
So I do believe that when we first met back in October, we sort of had a very draft outline of some warrant articles we were all thinking of. The Board of Selectmen has been working over the past month and a half on finalizing warrant articles. We had many options and made some difficult decisions. And the ones that we have before you this evening are the ones that remain on the draft warrant. So altogether, we have 11 articles. Several of them are requesting funding from taxation, and others are requesting funding from the unassigned fund balance. I think we just jump right into the operating budget. The operating budget is the numbers that we left off back in, I think it was October, with the proposed budget. The budget committee has developed a gross appropriation of $7,195,888, and then our default budget is set at $7,346,362. First time, at least since I've been working for the town, that our default budget is substantially larger than the proposed operating budget. A lot of that's due to a couple different factors. One, obviously, being we did make a lot of reductions, both the Board of Selectmen and the Budget Committee. And I think we had that radio communication tower project financing in there as well, and loss of revenues. So I don't know how much we want to get into the operating budget this evening, Mr. Cutter, or
Let me get off mute. Are there any questions here for Mr. Brown on the numbers presented? I think just from my standpoint, right, I know we're going to talk about the requests from the library as well as zoning that have come in for an increase. So I suspect that will change these numbers as well, correct?
it would, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think something to keep in mind is with the tax cap, we are limited as we go through more of these as to what we can recommend.
Right. So, I just, in full transparency, I want to make sure everyone's all on the same page, because it has been I don't know, definitely a month since we last met. And so as of right now, when we said that we would use the unassigned fund balance to make up the gap of lost revenues, we were using a number about $87,000 about a month ago, and that has changed to $57,000. So we'd be using $57,000 from the unassigned fund balance, and that would bring our everything, all the warrant articles that are being proposed, and the operating budget. It brings us at $1 below the tax cap. So whatever you do this evening, if you add more money to the budget, then we would need to use a little bit more money from the unassigned fund balance to keep us below that tax cap.
Okay.
And I've seen, some of those numbers. It shouldn't be a big problem. So.
Any further questions for Mr. Brown on Article 2? Okay, hearing none.
All right. All right, so the police contract, we had sort of a different approach this year due to COVID. We ended up agreeing, both sides agreed, that we wanted to try to make the negotiations as quick and easy as possible, limit the interaction with our negotiating teams, and we had we believe we're very, very pleased. Both sides are very pleased with the outcome. Right on the onset, we, instead of putting many items on the table. We agreed initially that if we could just negotiate wage and duration of the contract, then both sides would agree that we would not open up any other types of negotiations. And both sides were willing to try that. We were not sure if we would be successful, but given the situation we're in with COVID, we thought we'd give it a try. After several meetings back and forth, we were able to come up with a proposal. The union was really cooperative. They fully understood the discussions that were going on between the budget committee and the board of selectmen, the loss of revenues due to COVID, and just that we're in uncertain times for 2020 and going into 2021. So the way that we tried to both, address the financial needs of the town, but also keep our police contract healthy and competitive so that we're not losing our trained officers to other communities. We both agreed that we would give a wage increase in 2021 at 3%, in 2022 at 3%, and then in 2023 at 2.5%. The reason that you see a very small number in 2021 was the recognition by our union members that they were trying to help the town, and with our tax cap issue and revenues, they agreed where they traditionally would receive their wage adjustment on either April 1st or July 1st. We've been trying to get to the July 1st to be the normal date, but over the past few years, it has varied from April 1st to July 1st. We are able to agree to a 3% increase that would not take effect until October 1st, 2021. So in the last quarter of the fiscal year is when those wage increases would take effect. And then in 2022, on July 1st, there would be a 3% wage increase, and in 2023, a 2.5% wage increase. So two items: wage increase at 3, and 2.5, and a 3-year contract.
Okay. Any questions on Article 3 to Town Administrator Brown?
Actually, I have a couple, please. And
Please.
I apologize. I just lost connection. Came back, so I missed part of it. And I apologize too, because I'm sure this is going to be repetitive, but I wasn't at or with the budget committee to begin with. So can you just explain to me the variance and increase, like year 1 and 2 and 3?
Yeah, did you, the actual percentage, is that what you're looking for?
Well, no, just there's a large variance in dollars, and I'm not sure why that's there.
Okay, yeah, so go ahead.
Lost.
So what we did, Brian, was that both, I'm not sure what you heard.
I heard
Both
the
sides.
negotiation part. I heard that, and then I lost connection.
Okay, so both sides, just to make it real quick, both sides fully understood that the 2021 budget had some financial issues.
Yep.
One, we were losing revenues. Nobody knew what those were going to be. We're doing our best to do our best forecast. And two, they fully understood that we were wrestling with the tax cap. And so what we did, we did something a little different than we've ever done before. The union agreed not to take their wage increase on, and in the past it's been either April 1st or July 1st.
Okay.
They agreed to take that wage increase, defer it until the last quarter of our fiscal year, which would be effective April 1st, 2021. So all you see in 2021, that low number, is intentional to help meet the tax cap and to really help the financial situation of the town in 2021. In 2022, a 3% wage adjustment would be granted on July 1st. And then on 2023, a 3% wage adjustment on July 1st.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
It does, but so the first amount, what does that equate to as far as a percentage of an increase? I know it's only for a short period of time, but you know what that percentage is?
Well, that percentage is
Year
3% that will be given. I don't know the actual. You talking about the overall increase?
No, year one.
3% wage increase is what will be given on October 1st to all employees.
Did we just lose Troy?
No, I'm here.
Oh, well, year one, they deferred it to April, which is only like, what, a quarter of the year?
No, in year one of this contract, they deferred it to October 1st, 2021. So there's only 3, October, November, December, are the only months when there'll be a wage adjustment the first year of this contract.
Got it. All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Further questions for Mr. Brown? Okay, hearing none.
Okay. Article 4 is taking a part-time clerk position that we currently have in the office and moving that to a full-time position. So in order to do that, we would this transition would happen on April 1st if it's passed. And the first year cost of that would be $8,921. And the second year cost, we provide this information so that the voters are aware of what's the full cost of this decision would be. The second year, a full 12-month cost would be an additional $12,005. So as you know, right now, the department, probably one of the busiest administrative departments we have, collecting over $2 million of just regular revenues, and then all of our tax revenues. We're staffed with the elected town clerk, one full-time clerk, and a part-time clerk. And what we've experienced in the past few years is we've had turnover. It's definitely harder to retain part-time employees with not the full benefit package. And we've seen the workload increase tremendously in the department. And when you're running a department like this that's full service, we have 2 evening hours now, and we have hours in the morning where the town clerk will come in and work from 7 to 8 to assist citizens. And then we have evening hours Monday and Thursday. When you're trying to address training, vacation time, sick time, it's difficult to keep the office staffed with 2 full-timers, which is what's really required when we're operating that department, with just the 2 full-timers and the 1 part-timer. So I think this position, and the Board of Selectmen agree, obviously it wouldn't be here, is long overdue. This will give us 3 full-time employees in that department, which, as we all know, provides a tremendous service to the town.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on Article 4? Hearing none.
All right. Article 5 is Human Services and Health Agencies. There's 2 links that I do provide for you to take a look at when you have time. The first link, if I click on that, you probably should be able to see it, will give you the summary. And so we list here the agencies and what they've requested and what we're recommending. So as you recall, last year, there was a warrant article that created a committee that takes a look at these requests. We review them. We make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen. We have done that, and the board has acted on that. So this year, we're recommending $21,255. I just want to point out that the Litchfield's Women Club, they did receive funding last year. We're going to, because of the situation that's going on with COVID and just the need for our residents for basic needs and food and other basic living expenses, we're going to advance a $2,500 payment to them before we close our books. So that's why you don't see a recommendation in 2021 for the Litchfield Women's Club. We want to get that funding to them sooner than later. Every dollar goes to the Women's Club. Every dollar goes directly to assistance to our residents, dollar for dollar. There's no overhead at all. So I won't, unless anyone wants me to go through the list here. These are the groups that we've, I think a lot of us have seen over the past few years that we provide assistance to. The assistance is, Meals on Wheels, hospice care, a lot of mental type illness, domestic abuse, homelessness. It's that kind of assistance. The Red Cross is there. Obviously, they're providing assistance not only to our town but the region for all types of needs, health needs.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Brown?
I just have a small one. I see
Please.
that the United Way is recommended that there's a couple that have not been fully funded. So I'm just curious as to, just out of my own curiosity, as to why we're recommending to provide them with significantly more than they requested.
So let's see here. I may have made a mistake there. The request for $200, and we're giving $500. I think I probably made a mistake, and that $200 should be $500. But I will double check that. It could be the reverse.
All right, thank you.
Yeah. 211 for everyone. That would, obviously that's a high recommendation for our committee. That's a central one-stop access to everything. So if you're not familiar with any of these groups, you don't know where to go for assistance, all you need to do is just dial 211, tell the operator what your needs are, whether they're financial, mental health, homelessness, and they will work and connect you to the right agencies for assistance. It's a tremendous service for the community.
Yeah, their request was 500. I found it in the in the
So I put
PDF.
I put that 200 in there incorrectly. Change it.
Just like that.
There you go.
Any other questions on health agencies? I believe this was Article 5, correct?
Yep. Yes, sir.
Thanks.
Yes, it is.
Okay, hearing none, we'll move on to Article 6, please.
Okay, so those articles that we just reviewed, those all have a tax impact. We're going to be requesting citizens to consider raising and appropriating tax money to fund those initiatives. Now we're going to transition into items that we are looking to purchase or funds that we're looking to establish using the unassigned fund balance. So we're not going to be asking residents for additional tax money in 2021. We'll be using funds that have already, that we're holding on to right now that have already been taxed by the residents. So Article 6 is road improvements. The goal this year in the CIP and the goal that we've been talking about for the past couple of years was to try to restore the road. The annual question, we had a warrant article that for at least 3-4 years raised $200,000 towards road improvements. This was done intentionally to supplement the highway block monies that we receive on an annual basis from the state. It's been a very good tool. I think you can see the projects that we've done. I feel that our roads in this town are really in good shape, and we continue to be able to address the roads that need attention. My fear is that lacking funding in this area, we will start to see some slippage, and it can be very expensive for the community to try to catch up again. So anyhow, the road improvements, we wanted $200,000, but we were not comfortable taking that much money from the unassigned fund balance. The selectmen agreed that for this year, we would roll it back, ask for $100,000, and use the unassigned fund balance for this effort, but then also for some other needs that we need in 2021.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, no, you answered my question about the change from the CIPC, which was anticipated to be 200,000, and I see 100,000 here in the warrant article.
Yeah.
Further questions on Article 6? Okay, hearing done.
Article 7 is to purchase a plow truck. This would be the same exact plow truck that we purchased, that was approved last year. We have purchased that plow truck, but unfortunately, it's still sitting over at the facility in Londonderry that actually puts the plows and wing plows and equipment on. And due to COVID, we were able to purchase the chassis, the actual truck, but COVID had a delay in the manufacturing, and right now the truck is fully ready. The frame, plow frame, hydraulics, the sander salter, it's all mounted. Everything's ready to go, but we do not have the front plow or the wing plow. So it's there. We're very hopeful that we'll have an opportunity to use it this winter. It would have been nice to have it today and the previous storm. But we're hopeful that sometime the end of this month or January, we'll have that equipment and have it up and running. But the goal is, I think many of you have heard this, but is to try to transition to this new style truck, which I'll call a medium heavy duty truck. Still has that front plow, still has the wing, but it's not so heavy that it requires a commercial driver's license to operate. And that's the area where we're really having problems finding drivers. We're finding private contractors that have drivers with CDL licenses and have those heavy duty trucks that, with this type of equipment. So a lot of the contractors we're utilizing right now, they're plowing our streets with what I'll say is, a pickup truck or kind of like a landscaper or 1-ton truck. And they do not have wing plows. And I think that many of you probably have seen the difference of a street that's plowed with a wing plow versus one that's just a straight plow. The streets are very narrow during the storms and several days after the storms until we have time to get back there and push back. So this is, again, this would just be adding to the fleet. We're very hopeful that this article will pass and that we'll start to see, our fleet start to really get updated.
Okay, thank you. Questions on Article 7 for Mr. Brown? One question, if I may, I believe the intention was to see exactly how the current plow truck that I guess we're not utilizing quite yet was going to fare in the storms and getting around the cul-de-sacs. With no opportunity to do that, how confident are we that that's still the right truck for the town?
Well, I will tell you that during the process of buying this truck and going out to the Londonderry facility, the road agent came back. He gave me some pictures. He's been talking to the staff out there, and other towns are transitioning to this type of truck. There's like 3 other trucks just like ours sitting there, and one of them actually had the plow and wing on it. and the salespeople, the discussion that he's had with the salespeople saying, yeah, these are working great. They're perfect for Litchfield, because Litchfield doesn't have a lot of hills. It's pretty flat. It will be a great truck to go down those small streets, those side streets, those cul-de-sacs. So the feedback that we're getting from the sales folks, the people that are, fitting these trucks up for towns, is all positive. Between now and March, I guess, hopefully we get a chance to test drive it. But we do have a couple contractors that have 2 trucks that are similar to this. I think one of them is not a 4-wheel drive, but they only have the front plow on them. And those trucks do seem to work well, but they don't have the plow, the wing plow.
Okay, thank you. Further questions on Article 7?
Yeah, if I may.
Yes, please.
If I may. The trucks that we're purchasing, are they 4-wheel drive?
It's a 4-wheel drive, yeah. So it would have a dual axle in the back. So it has, 4 tires in the back, and in the front, these are, good sized tires. It's a 4-wheel drive vehicle. So it looks like a dump truck, but it's just the vehicle weight is just below the requirement for a commercial driver's license.
All right. So where we have difficult cul-de-sacs to plow, is there a possibility of including chains, or do you think that will be necessary?
No, I do not believe it'll be necessary.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, further questions, please? Okay, hearing none, we'll move into Article 8.
Article 8 would create a new expendable trust fund. The purpose of this fund would be for the annual, not the annual, but when we do our revaluation once every 4 years, we know that the cost is about $100,000 to do it. So our goal here is to put aside $25,000 every year, put it in the fund, and when the year comes that we're going to do the update, in this case, I guess in year 2025, we will have the funds available, already saved and ready to go to do this work. Again, I think most of us are aware that this is a requirement that the Department of Revenue Administration, they require the town once every 4 years to review all the properties, make sure the valuations are representative of market value, and that all the data that we have on the homes is correct. We just all went through this summer.
And this is building a fund, right? So come 4 years from now, there's adequate funds in that to cover the cost, and it doesn't hit the operating budget.
That's right. So for 4 years, we would, put the money aside. In the 5th year, when we do the revaluation, the money would be there.
Great, thank you. Further questions on Article 8?
Yeah, just a follow-up question on that. So would this be an article we would see every year for the next 4 years, or is this article intended to have that money for a 4-year period, that $25,000 for a 4-year period?
So it's intended that this article will appear every year.
Okay.
I mean, let's just put it this way. If I thought that I could, take $50,000 from the unassigned fund balance, or $100,000, then I would do that. But I'm if that opportunity is there, we could accelerate the appropriation of cash to put in the fund. But most likely, knowing the capital needs of the town, most likely we're going to see this article on the warrant for the next 4 years.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from other committee members? Okay, we'll shift into Article 9, please.
Article 9 would be the creation of a new expendable trust fund as well. This is specifically, and you're going to actually have a discussion about this evening. It's specific for health and dental care expenses, employer expenses, and it would be covering for the town and library employees. What we're trying to do here is basically create a contingency fund for unanticipated health and dental premium costs due to a change in employees' status, whether that, we go and do a new hire, and just say we had an employee that retired, they were on a single health plan. We go out and hire a new person, they come in and they're on a family plan. Depending on where we are in the budget, if we're early on and it's only February, we don't have any contingencies built in the budget to cover the added premium cost. And so that's what this is intended to do. It gives us, both the library and the town, the comfort of knowing that if we have any changes, we have a fund that we can turn to help assist us until we get to the next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you. Questions on Article 9?
Hi, Mr. Brown, could you explain how these situations are being handled currently really quickly, just so that it's clear what the
so there's two things. We currently, like in the town budget, every year we've had these changes occur. I shouldn't say every year, but it happens. And we have someone who goes from a buyout and they sign up to be covered. So, midstream through the year, we're picking up that added cost. And it's usually a spouse either losing employment or a spouse, their health plan changes, something like that. It's, or like I said, a new hire. That usually we can have changes just where someone's always been on a single plan and we have a new hire and they come in and it's a family plan. It's a substantial difference in cost when we're funding 80% of the cost of health and dental for a single plan versus a family plan. In the past, the town operating budget, because our budget's larger, we typically, for whatever reason, because we have some vacancies, we typically can cover, in most cases, that cost. The library has a very small budget, and the town has an agreement with them, which we have a memorandum of understanding that says, hey, listen, if we understand that your budget has no contingency for this, and we understand that your budget is small compared to the town budget. So if you have a change in status, we will help cover that cost until we get to the new fiscal year. And then you can plan and budget accordingly. And we had that happen this year. I think that's really what prompted this. We were having a discussion about whether or not the selectmen would still honor the memorandum of understanding that we have with the library trustees or not. And the selectmen making the right decision was like, you know what? We have this situation happen with the town side, and we know that it happens on the library side. The library, it's a severe impact. So why don't we create this fund? It will help us. It'll be some funds that we can turn to, and we'll make it for both town and library employees. And again, it's always used at the discretion of the selectmen. Just because we have a change in status doesn't mean that we're going to turn and use this fund. If we have a long-term vacancy that can make up the difference on the town side for town employees, that's typically the way we handle it. But in the library, we're not able to mix our funds with the library funds. I don't know if I answered your question. Did that answer your question, Nikki, or like?
Yeah, no, that did answer it. I thank you for that. I think you can kind of clarifying that it seems that the fund would be kind of if there wasn't a way to cover that in the operating budget with any vacancies or other funds, that Because I'm just thinking 25,000, that could be one change.
Oh, it could be, yeah. And yeah, we, at least with the Board of Selectmen, we traditionally, all the expendable trust funds that we have, we try our best not to utilize them. We try to use the operating budget first. And, that's all for like our technology fund, the fire engine repair fund, or the highway funds, the building facilities funds. And we do our best not to tap into these funds. And we do a pretty good job at that. So 25,000, yeah, it's, if we end up in a situation that's a substantial change and there's no access to any operating budget funds, probably this fund would get depleted down to $1 and we would have to come back in another year and ask to replenish the fund.
Okay, thank you. Further questions on Article 9?
Mr. Brown, I have a question. Actually, it's in regards to all of the warrant articles around the unassigned fund. Is there any potential impact to our credit rating based on these particular articles?
No, there isn't, because the town, we just went through a bonding process with the fire station, and we ended up, we're not self-rated. We're just too small. And so that's why we use the New Hampshire Municipal Bond Bank. And we pool any type of borrowing that we do for long-term financing. We pool it together with all of the smaller towns in the state, and that's how we get a good interest rate. And so the one tool, it's a good question, because there is one financial tool that when we do leasing, our lease purchasing, I've never done a tax anticipation note, but I'm sure the bank, if they were going to loan us money in advance for taxes, they look pretty strongly at this unassigned fund balance. And as guidance, there's set, the Board of Selectmen actually has a policy on it as well. And the Department of Revenue Administration takes a look at it every single year. But there's guidance that is set between that the town should maintain a unassigned fund balance in the range of 17% as a high to 5% as a low. And that percentage is the gross operating budget of the school, the county government, and the town. I think it's for 3 months. So everyone wants to see you have an unassigned fund balance, maintain an unassigned fund balance within that range of 17 to 5%. Each year when we go set our tax rate, the DRA goes through a calculation based on our audit report. And this year, the last year that we just had the completed audit and tax rate setting, our fund balance was kind of right in the middle, and that's where it's been for a few years, at 9.62%, which was $2.3 million. So over the last few years, we've been using, we've had articles where we've been using, anywhere from $150,000 to $200,000 of unassigned fund balance. And then the goal is that at the end of each fiscal year, we'll have some funds, surplus funds, that will go back into the unassigned fund balance and help make up for the funds that we lose, that we use. I think we're right there. I mean, so for any financial institution, auditing firm that's looking at our books, the auditors have commented publicly when they presented the audit. They like where we're at. They like us being right there at that 9%. I'd like to see us at, 10%, just to be extra safe. But anywhere right around there, 8, 9, 10% is where you want to be.
Perfect. Thank you very much for the details.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Further questions on Article 9? All right, Article 10, please.
All right, so Article 10 is now, this is a housekeeping article, I consider it. The fire station bond, will be closing that out. And one of the things that we're not, the selectmen, no one's allowed to expend the interest that was earned on the bond while we were holding the funds. So the only way that those funds can be used is through a warrant article. And the selectmen are putting this article on to use all the interest funds in the amount of $23,582.86. That number probably will change when we get close to December 31st, because that's the number we're going to capture on at the end of the year. And if this article passes, we will use this amount of money to pay the fire station, a portion of the fire station bond in 2021.
Okay, thank you.
Questions
on Article 10?
Yeah, quick question on that one, Mr. Brown. As far as the using these particular proceeds, is that expected to help lower the bond payment? I mean, the payment that we have in 2021, or is it just looking to try to lessen the overall length of the loan?
Yeah, and so unfortunately, the selectman asked me that question as well. The bond that we have, because it's low interest government bond for a period of time, and I don't know that period of time, but it's probably somewhere 7 years or more. You're not allowed to make prepayments on principal to try to buy down that principal and reduce interest costs. So all we're trying to do here is to capture the interest that was earned and put it towards the 2021 payment. It's not going to shorten the life of the bond. It's not going to save us any interest on the bond.
And a follow-up question, if I may, with that particular response, does that mean that we could potentially see for 2021 a lower amount for the fire station payment in 2021 because of this $23,000, and then it will balloon back up in 2022?
No, so what will happen is it's kind of difficult, because what would be really nice is if I could take our operating budget, the proposed budget, and we have the amount of the bond payment in the operating budget. We just can't reduce. We don't know. I mean, I'm thinking that this article will pass, but you don't know that. So in the operating budget, I have to budget for the full payment, not knowing if this article will pass or not. And if this article passes, we'll use the funds towards that payment. And the selectmen, sort of on the honor system here, we'll try our best, to make sure that these funds are not touched, and they'll become surplus at the end of the year.
Great, thank you.
So, Troy, I understand what you're saying about surplus, but you will receive that $23,000 surplus. So why not guarantee that the following year the payment would be $23,000 less?
I guess I mean, we could. I mean, it could be. I mean, that's something that you look at next year. I mean, I can't, for 2021 in our operating budget, we've budgeted the full payment for the bond. In addition, we're asking citizens if we could take this interest earned on the bond and apply it towards the 2021 payment, which means that in the operating budget, we will spend everything that was appropriated less the 23.5.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess next year the selectmen could have a warrant article, to see if the citizens would use that surplus to pay towards the bond. But we're going to be in the same situation, because I'm still going to need to budget the full amount for the bond. You don't know if a special warrant article would pass. I've done this before in like a traditional town meeting when everyone gets together on a Saturday morning at a gymnasium. And typically what they would do is they would act on this article first. And then if it passes, you would go to the operating budget and amend it downward by the 23.5.
And unfortunately, in this case, it's a whole year would go by before you would do that. Right.
Yeah. The selectmen were just trying to be as transparent as possible with this, and just want to be upfront with the citizens that we had this money. You're being taxed on the bond, and this is the money we can't use. We have no ability to use it, so we want to give you the opportunity to use it to put towards the bond.
Okay, further questions on Article 10? Article 11, please.
Article 11's Fire Facilities Fund, another housekeeping. We had a capital reserve fund that was created back in 2000. The intent of that fund was obviously to start saving money for a new fire station. And as of right now, we've got a new station, and we have a building facilities expendable trust fund that covers all building maintenance. So there really is no need to have a special fund sitting out on the books, especially where it's only has a balance of $612.93. So the purpose here is to close this fund out, take the $612 and transfer it into the building systems expendable trust fund.
Questions on Article 11?
Yeah, just real quick, Troy, why wouldn't you then apply that monies also to the bond?
I don't know. I mean, it's just, I felt that it was just trying to keep it simple to close out the fund. It was, I think the original language of this fund may have been to do some repairs as well. And so I don't think it was just specifically, let me see here. With the authorize the transfer. Oh, I highlighted it. Here we go. Shall the town establish a fire facilities capital reserve fund under the provisions of RSA 35:1 for the purpose of constructing fire facilities and their improvements, and to further authorize the use and transfer $25,000. So they used $25,000 from the unassigned fund balance to establish this fire facilities capital reserve fund. And the purpose of the fund was for constructing fire facilities and their improvements. So I think I just kind of focused in on their improvements and thought that, for $600 to just put it into the building maintenance fund. I don't think there's a right or wrong here.
Yeah, Mr. Bryan, as far as the building maintenance fund, obviously the fire station can now pull off of that building maintenance fund, correct?
Yes. Off the one that we have, we have about $50,000 in, yes.
Okay.
Okay, further questions on Article 11? Okay, Article 12, solar.
So one of the things that happened, when we did our update this year, as we all know, many people are putting solar panels, and they have been putting solar panels on their rooftops, on their property, and those have a value. And the assessing company had been tracking them and decided that they would address the values when they do the update year. Obviously, homeowners have had these units on their property for some time, maybe a couple of years, and then now they're being assessed and taxed for them. This is an attempt to give some relief to help support green energy to help have an an incentive for people to utilize green energy and to put these systems on their property. What it would do is exempt the value of the solar system up to an amount of $27,000 per unit. Not all units in town are assessed at $27,000. The average right now is right around $20,000. We came up with the $27,000 max because it's equivalent to, at the current tax rate you see in the table below, $27,000. When you apply the tax rate, it's $501.66. That is represents like the veterans tax credit. So that's where the $27,000 came from. We had to come up with some type of a cap. Otherwise, I mean, one of the options was that we could have had 100% of the value of these systems exempt from taxation. The concern when you do that is that some systems, and as we see going further in the future, these systems are becoming pretty sophisticated, where not only can they generate enough power for their house, but they can generate enough power to be able to sell back to the grid and become, more than just something for their home. So we felt that we needed to have a cap on the assessed value that we're going to give an exemption on. So that's how we came up with the assessment of $27,000. We would exempt up to $27,000. The average unit per house is about $20,000. So we're going to lose if you're trying to figure out, well, how much tax revenue are we going to lose based on the 61 properties right now that have these systems, and we have 1.2 million out there in assessed value. We would lose $23,018.58 in tax revenue in 2021. Now, these numbers change, people adding solar systems today, but that just gives you an understanding of what we're talking about.
So the two rows here are, the first row is meant to be just representative of one property, so it's transparent on the taxes lost, but there's not 62 properties, there's 61.
There's 61, yeah.
My question looking at this is why are we calling out one property separately than the rest? But that's not actually what's happening here.
Yeah, I just tried to, that is supposed to be an example of if someone qualifies for the maximum exemption of $27,000, it would be equivalent to a loss of $501.63.
Thank you.
And most units are not going to be assessed at that. The average is about $20,000. But what this does is, if the residents of this town want to give an exemption on solar systems, there's a cap. So the most a homeowner is going to get is $27,000 up to $27,000 of property exemption. So if you go put a $50,000 system in, you're only going to get the exemption will only be applied to the first $27,000 of assessed value.
Okay, thank you. Further questions on Article 12?
No, it makes sense the way that you explained it, Troy. I definitely think this is going to be one at like the budget hearing and deliberative that we need to be really clear, like the impact for people, because the way that it's laid out, I could see it being confusing.
Yes.
I remember looking at this a couple of months back at this point, and I seem to recall a lot of our neighboring towns have a cap of $5,000 of assessment. Is that true?
Oh, no, well, I'll share with you tomorrow. I'll send it out to the budget committee. A lot of the communities are 100%. They exempt 100% of the value.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Oh, and I wanted to point out one other thing. I forgot. Another thing. So the selectmen were very concerned. They wanted to have a cap on the value. And another thing that we wanted, because we look at this as an incentive, it's for people to invest in this type of infrastructure. But this would only the homeowner who makes this investment would be eligible for the exemption. Once you sell the property, the exemption's lost. And I think that's, because people will come and buy a house. You buy a house because it has a built-in pool. You buy it because it has this, you have that. That's you're buying. It's different than someone making a decision to invest in this type of, energy improvements.
Okay, thank you. Further questions on Article 12?
So Troy, would this also,
yes.
I'm sorry, would this also apply
No, go
to
ahead.
businesses? The same amounts?
You know what? I'm gonna have to double check that and see with the RSA if it's inclusive of businesses as well. I'll find out.
Hayes, question?
Good question.
Yes, the question I have, let's say the resident who is installing this has an advantage in their reduced, consumption rate or whatever. They're providing
Right.
their own electric.
Yep.
Okay, in addition to that, the state would also provide probably some additional rebate to incentivize the homeowner to make this transition. And then if I'm looking at this table, right, 500, let's say the max is $501. So over a 10-year period, that resident would realize $5,000.
In tax savings.
Annual,
Mhm.
Right, this is an annual thing.
Yeah.
So are we being too generous?
We just try to benchmark against, when we said, hey, how do we come up with a cap? And we looked at some of the exemptions and credits we have in place today in town. And the veterans credit was one of the ones that, we looked at being $500 annually.
But a veteran isn't getting a savings on an annual basis based upon consumption. The veteran is a one-time thing.
Yeah, this goes on. You're right. This exemption would be each year, and they benefit from the energy savings, and they probably benefited from a one-time incentive through PSNH maybe, and then I know that the federal tax credit is out there still. Maybe there's 1 or 2 years left for a federal tax credit. That would be a one-time federal tax credit. This exemption would continue with the property. Now, with that being said, the assessed value of the solar panels, do they decrease, over time? I can ask my assessors that to see if they're going to be taking a look at these things and depreciating them so that they're not really, they're not valued as much as when they're brand new, 5-10 years older. How much do they depreciate?
Thank you.
But I will find out about the business, whether businesses would be eligible, and I'll share that chart with you that has the Department of Revenue Administration has put together a chart that shows an inventory of all the towns in the state and the dollar amounts of the credits.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Brown, I did look up the RSA, and it does say homes and small businesses.
Okay.
Further questions on Article 12?
I think that one thing that Troy didn't mention was that we don't have anything in town now that taxes on this particular item. And this was kind of a way that Avatar is bringing it into the forefront, but at the same time, not really burdening the too much up front. They're still going to pay taxes on the systems. It's just we're trying to help ease the burden because of their commitment to go green, which I think is a good thing.
Okay, are there any additional articles this evening?
That's the last article.
Okay. Further questions on any of the articles presented this evening?
I did have a question, and I apologize I didn't jump on it fast enough. On Article 4, the town clerk position.
Yes.
So I know that there were some changes that had financial impact to the operating budget on the town clerk and tax collector budgets because of some of the changes in personnel, and recognizing the longevity of service. I'm just a little confused about how if Article 4 were to pass, how that would jive with the changes that have already been made.
So we are going to treat this as a new position.
Okay.
And so a salary range will be established. And yeah, so it's going to be treated as a new position.
Because then that would be 3 full-time positions, no part-time positions.
No part-time positions. Yeah.
Okay.
So we've had some changes because of seniority and just internal personnel, changes to keep the services going. And so there is a part-time right now. There's a part-time employee working full-time. If this article passes, we will have a full-time clerk, and that position would be we would handle it like any other personnel matter. Whether it will be a new position, and again, we hopefully we can look internally. We may look internally and outside at the same time. I don't, but a wage scale will be established.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions on the articles this evening for the town? Okay, Mr. Brown, thank you very much for the presentation this evening and taking us through the draft warrant articles. Just a point of clarification from my side, when do you anticipate the board being able to recommend or not recommend these warrant articles?
They actually did. I apologize. I didn't get the recommendations in the document, but at our last meeting on December the 14th, they went through all these articles and they have voted to recommend all of these articles.
Okay, great. So when we meet and vote on January 7th, which is our scheduled date to vote on the warrant articles, these will have already been recommended at that point.
Yeah, I'll have the recommendations and the votes in there.
And because of the changes with the library and zoning that we're going to talk about this evening, that would obviously change Article 2, the operating budget? How would that work?
Our next meeting. So you're voting on these on the January the 7th?
Correct.
The 20.
The 11th. So let's see here. The 11th would be our meeting. Is that going to be too late? When's your hearing?
The hearing is going to be the 16th. I'm sorry, the 14th. Thursday the 14th.
Okay, so we'll have our Board of Selectmen's meeting on the 11th of January.
Okay.
So we can address the tax cap issue.
Okay. So we
Is that what
may
you're
need,
asking?
it is, and we may, as a budget committee, we may need to re-vote after the hearing on the updated Article 2.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Thank you again. With this, we'll shift gears for the time being into the school warrant articles. Mr. Burke or Dr. Jetty, I think you're on. I'm not sure who's going to take it.
Let me stop sharing here.
Burke or Dr. Jetty?
Okay. Andrew, point of clarification, the selectmen meet again on December 28th.
Ah, okay. So there'll be an opportunity there, perhaps even for January 7th to meet and to revote.
I just
Excellent.
confirmed.
Thank you.
I didn't want to
Thank you,
interrupt
Mr.
Troy
Leary.
without having.
No, I think I think I got hung up on that they're voting on the 7th. So, on January 7th is when you're going to vote. You think you'll take action tonight? You might take action tonight on the request that you have from the zoning and library.
Well, typically we would review the request and then vote the next meeting unless the will of the committee is different, right? So I would anticipate that remaining the same where we discuss it tonight and then
Okay.
vote at our next meeting.
Okay. So at least, on the 28th of December, I can give the Board of Selectmen an update on where we're at on, what was discussed this evening. And we'll figure it out. But it looks like we've got 2 meetings that we can accommodate the Budget Committee.
Excellent. All right, we'll get it figured out then. It looks like we just lost Dr. Jetty. Perhaps
right.
he's having some
Thank you.
connectivity issues. Thank you.
Yep. This will give him a second to get back in here.
Sure.
I know Miss Douglas joined us shortly after Troy started. Was Mr. Hodgkins able to join us?
I do not see Mr. Hodgkins joining us this evening. No. Why don't we do this? So, while we wait for Dr. Jetty, I think the request from zoning as well as the request from library will be a fairly quick conversation. Let's bang that out if that's okay with the committee while we give Dr. Jetty a chance to rejoin the meeting. Does that work?
Sure.
Thumbs up. All right. So we'll skip over school warrant and we'll come back to that here momentarily. There was a request from the zoning board on December 7th from Mr. Rick Riley. He had alerted myself, which was forwarded to the committee, of a missed item within the zoning budget that he'd like to see reinstated before the budget is voted on and approved. There was a line item for notices, which are estimated at $150 per notice. The zoning board on average issues 9 notices per year. Per law, they're required to issue in the newspaper, in the local paper, which they do so in the Union Leader. And so the request is for a $1,000 add to the zoning budget to cover the expenses of the public notices. Any thoughts or questions on that one?
So from what I can see, that there was a vote that reduced the public notice line by 700 because the total that was proposed was 15. And we reduced it to be back to what was approved in 2020.
Which is what amount? I don't have that in front of me.
800.
800.
So in 2020 approved was 800. What they had proposed and what the selectmen brought forward was 1,500, noting that because of we don't have the HLN anymore, that each notice is $150 each, and there's approximately 9 or 10 of them. And I remember we did have a discussion about how some of the revenue is recouped on the other side. But it was the will of the committee to reduce that line by 700.
Got it.
And we had reduced the seminar line by half.
So there's $800 in that line item at the moment.
Correct.
Correct. So the request then is to, I guess, I don't want to put words into Mr. Riley's mouth, but my interpretation of his note to the committee is to add $200 to that line item.
Mr. Chair, just a point, looking back at the note from Mr. Riley, based on, and this might be something we want to clarify before we vote vote next time, but at $150 average of 9 cases, that's closer to the $1,500 that we originally cut versus the $1,000 that was in the note. So I think we might want to clarify what the ask is. Is it to restore it to the full $1,500 based on 150 times 9?
Mr. Brown, you don't happen to have any further detail on this one, do you?
I think he's on.
Is he gone? I thought I saw
My
him still connected.
interpretation was that they were asking for it to be restored back to the 1,500
Okay.
to allow them to cover, 9 or 10 at 150 each. I think they were confused about how much was cut.
Mr. Brown?
Yeah, I am back. I don't have any additional information. I know the 1,500 was, probably what they were looking for. I think, 1,350 looks like, if I did the math right, is what they're asking, 1,350.
Okay. Allow me to clarify that with Mr. Riley as a next step. I'll do that certainly tomorrow, and I'll provide that clarification to the committee in time for our next meeting. Sound like a plan?
The only question I would have is that to reflect only the items that are not covered by applicants? Because my understanding of that line is some is covered by the town, but some of it's also recouped from applicants. So if they go over, but they are covered by applicant fees, then there's really no harm to their line.
Right.
So,
Offset.
right. So, I mean, we could increase this line, but also offset it with an increase in revenue. So my question would ultimately be, does this reflect, what is included in this number?
Yeah, I think Mrs. Douglas is absolutely correct. If we budget 1,500 for this line, then we should be offsetting it with 1,500 of revenue.
Okay. Allow me to clarify, and we'll have that for our next meeting. I know Dr. Jetty rejoined. Allow me just to finish up with the library, Dr. Jetty, and then we'll start with the school warrant review momentarily. So in addition to the zoning requests from Mr. Riley, I also received 2 requests from the library itself. One on December 15th for heating oil in the amount of $313.25. It's my understanding that there was a misunderstanding between the library and the school, and the library being able to take benefit of the school rates for oil. And they received an increase in their rates, resulting in a $313.25 increase. And additionally, what was circulated to the committee, and as previously talked about this evening, was there was a change in employee status, and that employee at the library requires insurance, and that total amount is for $10,965 that was not budgeted when we went through the library budget originally, and they're asking that $10,965 to be added to the budget before we vote bottom line. Any questions on the requests from the library?
Just a quick question. What have they done in the past where all of a sudden they can't join the school?
That's a great question. I don't know the answer to that.
It's the same vendor that we've used in the past, Dennis Burke Oil. I remember my communications with them in talking about the town and the library, so I don't know where that fell off.
Okay. So any questions on the insurance part of this? No? All right, allow me to follow up with Vicky as well from the library, and we'll see perhaps if even she can join our next meeting for additional clarifications. I know she's been really great at joining our past meetings. Does that work?
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Yes.
All right, so without further ado, Dr. Jetty, I think you've rejoined us, correct? Can you hear us okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we're in business now.
Perfect. And can you see the warrant articles that I'm trying to share?
Yes, sir.
Excellent. So let me just walk right through it. Article 1 is the operating budget. It's the same format that we've had in the past. And of course, we're waiting for the final dollar amounts to fill in there. And the board will take action as soon as we have those ready to post in. We then will move on to Article 2, and Article 2 is linked to Article 3. Essentially, Article 2 is the tech integrator position. We have put the dollar amount of $86,200 in. and that is to fund the salary and benefit costs of a full-time district-wide technology integrator position. That will support one-to-one technology education for students and staff. You'll notice that there's an article note right after that that says the district has identified the need for 2 technology integrators. Articles 2 and 3 taken together will fund the school district's needs. And so the intent here is that Article 3, which is worded the same as Article 2, really allows the voters to determine what they feel comfortable funding. So our hope is that they will support both Article 2 and Article 3. You'll see that each one has passed the school board with a 5-0-0 vote last night as recommended. But this does allow the voters to weigh in, and if they so choose to support one and not the other, it allows that option. So our concern is that if we had one article with 2, you could end up with 0, which would leave us in a difficult position because we really do need both of these. So at least this will tier them and allow the voters to weigh in.
Okay, thank you. Any questions on Article 2 or 3?
Yeah, Dr. Jetty, I think it's a great idea for the school district to have these on 2 separate articles, as well as having them as district-wide positions. I think it best positions these to hopefully be passed by the town. My question is, was there any conversation either with the administrative team or the school board about including language in the article note that talks about how the cost is being offset by the positions that were cut from the budget, so that for a town person coming to vote, understanding that are we adding 2 positions or these are being offset by 2 positions that are no longer needed?
So we didn't talk about putting that directly on the warrant. There are some legal requirements in terms of what we can do and how long we want the article note to be. But we certainly, in marketing these and sharing with the public what our intent is, we will certainly raise that we have cut those 2 positions from the high school, and the funds are being repurposed for these 2 warrant articles. So imagine the voter guide and the information that we send out. We will certainly be making it clear that we made those cuts in the hopes of getting these.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for the clarification. Any further questions on 2 or 3? Okay, Article 4, please.
All right, and Article 4 is the last article, so it's a nice short warrant this year. Article 4 is asking about raising and appropriating $100,000 to be put into the Capital Improvement Expendable Trust Fund. That fund was established by the voters last year, and the purpose of that fund is to study plan and cover the costs of new construction or renovation of existing facilities in the school district. Our goal with this is to take it from the unassigned fund balance, so therefore there is no impact on taxes. And I just want to point out that there is a note in there that this dollar amount, 100,000, is consistent with the capital plan. So when the town adopted the capital plan in September of 2020, it included a $100,000 expenditure this year to go into that fund. Our intent is to continue to develop a plan to bring forward to the voters the following year relative to Griffin Memorial. And this money will be used to complete the planning process, and putting it into the Expendable Trust Fund. We're just not certain how much it will cost to do that. And so, we'll be frugal as we can. We'll get done the work that we need to do. And then if there's money left over, it would remain in that trust fund to go toward the building project. So it's just sort of allowing us the ability to develop that project and to have it ready to bring forward. You can see that the board voted last night to recommend it by a 5-0-0 vote.
Great, thank you. One point of clarification on this one for me. Last year, at the March election, there was also an article similar in nature, right, where there was I believe it was 70,000 that was approved. How is that money being spent this year?
Yep. So last night, the Facility Improvement Committee received an enrollment study report. That's a very detailed look at our enrollment. It projects us out until 2030, so it's a 10-year look. And that cost us money to have done because we had that done by the School Administrators Association. They have far greater access to historical trends and so forth. So it's a deeper dive than the enrollment report that we run in-house. The second thing that we asked them to do, and the committee has not received this report yet, that they will be receiving that in January, and that is it's sort of a meta review of all the studies that have been done on Griffin, going back to 2000 and right up to date. That is an incredibly studied school with all sorts of reports and all sorts of conclusions. Much of it was used to support warrant articles that came forward in 2004, 5, 6 era to propose building a new Griffin at that time. You can imagine since then, there have been more studies and more needs identified. Our sense is that although we could have done a summary of all of that in-house, we really wanted an independent third party to review all of that work and to encapsulate it into one comprehensive report. I felt it was important that somebody independently do that so that there wouldn't be any claim that we were biased or trying to, ignoring something to pay attention to something else kind of thing. So that's why we've had that report done by the School Administrators Association. So once the Facility Needs Committee gets that report in January and the full board gets it, that report will also become part of the record and public record. So that's sort of step 2 of spending the $70,000. The next step is then to begin the owner's project requirement phase of the development. So our intent is to develop what the school district envisions and to get community input on that. So it would be a very public process, and community members could weigh in on what they feel is important in a project that we bring forward. And so then based upon that, I'm not sure where we'll land at that point, but that is how we're using the current funds that we have allocated. And Corey, remind me, did the $70,000 go into the capital reserve fund, or is that a spend it by June?
It was transferred into that capital reserve that was established. I believe we transferred it in August.
Okay, yeah, that's right. Because when we again put the $70,000 out, the intent was to park it there so that if we didn't use it all, then it would be available to us toward an eventual project. So, but we are using it for the studies that we're conducting at this time.
Yeah, and we also when we received the one-time fiscal disparity aid from the state that we had the special election for to appropriate, that $650,000+ also is parked in that fund well. So it has a healthy balance right now.
Thank you for the detailed explanation. I appreciate that. Further questions on Article 4?
So I guess a question that might come up, given that the one-time fiscal disparity aid was placed into this fund, I could see someone potentially saying, well, you have some money in there. What is the need right now for $100,000?
I think the amount of money that we can build up in that fund as we get towards the point of potentially building a new facility or renovating existing facilities, the more money we have on hand in that, it does offset. We can use that to offset any bonding that we may have to take, or to help offset some payments on some leasing, whichever direction we choose to go. I think it's just really important to have that money on hand.
I would agree with that response that the estimated cost of an elementary school is close to $30 million. So you're talking about a fairly large expense. So building up funds over time can help to lessen the impact of that. The other thing is to point out that this trust fund is also for renovation. So there are some needs at the middle school that we've identified. The HVAC system at the middle school really is in need of replacement. And so we're now have just adopted an owner's project requirement for the middle school. And so I wouldn't look at, okay, $100,000 toward the elementary project is the sole reason. There are other projects that can also help out with, including the $660,000. We don't have a dollar amount yet for the HVAC system, but it's not inexpensive given the age of the building and the amount of square footage that we have to do. And there are also recommendations that improving the insulation value of the building would be important for energy savings matters too. So when you package it all together, it'll be a project that will really save taxpayers a significant sum in the long run. But we will have to spend some money in order to get there. And our intent is to set that building up to get another 35, 40 years of useful life out of it. And if we can do that correctly and have it properly insulated, the cost that you spend now will come back in dividends down the road. So it's just a matter of getting it all lined up.
Thank you.
Has there been any thought to asking the voters which direction they wish to go with regards to GMS? Because it seems like this is directing it towards new construction. And my concern is we're going to spend a lot of money getting the specs and everything ready for that. And we need a supermajority to pass that bond. So if we don't get that supermajority and we've spent all this money to develop documents for a new building and we go down, then what? So should we ask the voters for their, because I understand that the school would like a new building, but you just threw out a tag of $30 million. I don't see $30 million being necessary to renovate the building.
I'm
So
sure
the
Mr. Burke
question
will have
is-
something, to say here on
No,
the
I
CIPC.
understand that, but my concern as a budget committee member is investing money in documents that don't get approved by the voters.
I think one thing that needs to be considered when it comes to the GMS site is that in order to renovate, you have a large drainage issue and high water table in that building. In order to renovate that building, you're going to have to do that. That's millions of dollars to take care of that issue at that building when we have a site higher up that's ready to go. The amount of things that need to be addressed down there, you've been in there, Carrie. It's really it's not conducive to being a school anymore. It's not a healthy, well, I won't say it's not a healthy environment. I'll say it's not a good environment for learning. It's not bright. It's very dark. It's wet. When you have a humid day in the spring and kids are ice skating across the floor. So there's a lot of things that need to be addressed there. It's not so much a matter of not wanting to renovate the building and not understanding the historical significance of it to that building to the town. It's that it's run its course, and it's time to start looking at what best suits the children in Litchfield.
Go ahead, Mr. Burke.
I was going to say that our architects have already said that putting money into this building is really not the right thing to do. And I don't recall, Dr. Jetty will tell you, someone from the state came in to assess the building and basically said, yeah, you don't want to do anything with this building.
Yeah, I think if we once we get the meta-analysis of all the studies that have been done, that will paint a picture of why renovation is not the option that we should go with. The state has said that the site is unacceptable. It doesn't meet current standards. They're not going to bond money for us. They're not going to support us doing stuff there. So it's going to leave the town more on the hook. And that will bear itself out when you see that report. I think the other thing that's important to keep in mind is that, last year's $70,000 ask, we were crystal clear. It was to study Griffin and the feasibility of a new Griffin. And so that was sort of dipping our toe into the water and getting a temperature check on the public, and people supported that Warrant article. The second dipping your toe in the water was the capital planning process, which was a very, very public process. There are a lot of needs in town, and the Griffin project came out as the #1 rated project in that report. And so when you sort of put all of these pieces together, I think people are weighing in and are having opinions on it and are identifying this as an important project. I get that it's a big price tag. But again, if we build a school that is sized correctly, that meets our needs for the projected future, that has energy savings embedded into it, and is a better environment, I think the public will rally behind that. And of course, there are some costs associated with developing that, but in the end, I do believe that people will be able to weigh in and have that vote.
Again, my main concern is it's a supermajority. That's not 50%. It's not 50% plus one. You need to convince all but 40% of this town. And my concern, I've stated my concern, and I think it's unfortunate we don't have a backup plan. So, but that's your call.
Let's keep it to the article, right? I mean, so we're not talking about the construction of a new school this evening. We're not talking about the voting outcomes of a supermajority. We're talking about $100,000, understanding it's rolling in and spending money for the purpose of, right? But this discussion tonight is relevant to this one article as on our screen.
No, and my only concern was that we were jumping a step. I'm all for renovating certain buildings. I think that's a wise move. I just think that we're moving forward without getting a good indicator in the town on one particular school. But it's all wrapped into one, so it is what it is. You answered my question. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions for the school? I see nobody coming off mute, and I think we're good to go ahead and proceed. Thank you, Dr. Jetty, for the presentation. Thank you, Mr. Izabicki and Mr. Burke for your thoughts as well.
You're welcome.
Okay, so moving into the next budget or agenda update, I had put in a line item for school budget update. What I wanted to address here, and then I'll turn it over to the committee and members for comment, is, you know, one of the things that has not sat well with me in reviewing our budget recommendations and motions are the bottom line reductions across the three schools. So at our meetings, we reduced $2,000 from GMS, we reduced $15,000 bottom line from CHS, and we reduced $14,500 from LMS. Historically, it's been the committee's direction to, if we're going to take motions and reductions like that, to do it on specific line items within those buildings. So it's very clear that we're impacting, whether it be physics, I know was a point of discussion this year, whether it be specific programs or specific, you know, requests within the budget and not just an overall bottom line cut. One of the offsets to that I also looked at was the attrition cut, right, which was a motion that I made. I do feel that there's additional monies in salaries and benefits that we can reduce, but the only way I would do that motion is if we restore the money across GMS, CHS, and LMS. That in total, if I look at my motion, which would be an additional $50,000 in salaries and benefits reduction, on top of the $31,500 that we reduced across the schools, that would actually result in an additional reduction to the budget of $18,500, which benefits the taxpayer. It also allows us to provide clear direction to the schools that we're not trying to dictate, you know, how they run their specific programs. You know, to Mr. Ledliker's point at our last meeting, right? His budget as coming into this process was already reduced. It was already down before the budget committee took another $14,000, $14,500 to be exact, out of it. And, you know, GMS, although it's a modest $2,000, it still is impacting certain line items that I know Mr. Mitchell was planning on budgeting. So one of the things that I've commented on in the past, and I want to, you know, stay good and true to, is if it doesn't feel right, I want to have an opportunity to correct it. Now, I'm not saying I'm going to get the support of the committee on this, but what I'd like to do, and I'm going to make a motion to restore $31,500, which is the balance across CHS, LMS, and GMS, to restore the bottom line cuts made.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. My discussion was just made. Is there further comment from the committee?
So, Mr. Chairman, just a point of clarification. So you are only looking to reduce the bottom line budget cuts for each of those three schools. Any of the in-line items that we voted on still remain in effect, correct?
Absolutely correct, because that's clear direction on specific areas of the budget that the committee felt was warranted and voted on and went through the appropriate process. The $31,500 is the total from the specific bottom line budget reductions across the three schools.
Thank you.
I support this. In hearing LMS talk about a 10% cut, and the other two principals as well, it was a challenge for them, and I think they had to take a hard look. CHS in particular, looking at historical programs that they had run, kind of based on that. And my is here moving forward that when we do make cuts to the school budgets, that we look at specific line items so that it does provide more clear direction for principals, as opposed to the bottom line. It's just my preference.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Yeah, can I just ask for clarification? So you're saying you will reinstate the $30-some-odd thousand, but we'll turn around and cut $50,000 from salaries and benefits?
On the table at this moment is to restore $31,500, which is $15,000 at CHS, $14,500 at LMS, and $2,000 at GMS.
No, I understand. Didn't you say that there was like another $50,000 that you can cut from salaries and benefits,
Correct.
which then in turn would be another additional $18,000 savings to taxpayers?
$18,500. So if this motion passes, I will then make a second motion to reduce salaries and benefits for attrition of another $50,000.
Okay, thank you. That's what I have.
Further discussion? Okay, hearing none, we'll take a roll call vote. Let me see who I see first. Mr. Burke?
No.
Okay. Mr. Sun?
Yes.
Ms. Douglas?
Yes.
Ms. Forty? Is that a yes? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yes. Mr. Taylor?
Aye.
Mr. Hayes?
Yes.
I am an aye. And did I miss anybody? Well, Mr. Leary, I'm sorry.
Aye.
Aye. That carries 7-1-0. Well, you're not on camera, so I skipped over you there. My apology there.
I have a face for radio.
Okay, so that passes 7-1-0. So that money, that money's been restored. In addition to that, I'm going to make a second motion to reduce salary and benefits as an attrition cut by $50,000.
I'll second that.
We have a second by Mr. Hayes. Discussion has already been held. Is there further discussion amongst the committee?
Can you clarify where you're getting the 50,000 from? It just seems like a nice round number where I'm not clear where you're seeing.
Yeah, sure. So happy to. So every year we look at the attrition cuts. At our last meeting, we talked about attrition heavily. We talked about 200,000 kind of being on the low end of that spectrum for what we felt comfortable. I know some other committee members felt it should have been a higher reduction as well. In years past, that number and that reduction has been, I've made reductions to 750,000 to attrition, right? Last year was a 370,000 approximate reduction to attrition. When I look at the numbers, there's still adequate monies in the salary and benefits line that will most likely not be spent due to past history and due to overage in budgeting for salary and benefits. So I feel strongly and confidently that there's at least another $50,000 in salaries and benefits that we can reduce.
Okay. Have you given any consideration as to what would happen should the tech integrator warrant articles not pass? It's my understanding that the operating budget has reduced those Tech 1 and Tech 2 positions.
That's correct, yeah.
So that would definitely be a source because there is that need for the technological support there.
Agree, but if the warrant articles fail, right, which I think is your question, then under no means no, they wouldn't be able to do anything next year anyways.
Well, they couldn't have the same warrant articles. There would be, I'm just saying that that would put them in within the salaries and benefits if we're looking within that pool. The money is not currently there for those Tech 1 and Tech 2 positions that were reduced.
Correct, because they're on warrant article at the moment.
Right. It's just something that was floating around.
Yep.
So I would like to point out, with the money that we've added back in, we've still cut over $500,000 from the school district's budget through other cuts and through attrition. I feel like that is a large number, but I think it's a number that we all were okay with moving forward, and that was the will of the committee. I personally don't see a need for the additional $50,000 at this point.
Okay.
I'd like to point out that that 500,000 also doesn't factor in that 170 has to be restored, and that's up. So it could actually be a reduction of significantly less than 500,000 if those two pass. You're talking 320,000.
Okay, further comment or questions from the committee? I see your hand up.
I just wanted to clarify something so I have it straight. I think, Nikki, if I'm not mistaken, when you talked about the Tech 1 and 2 positions, you were talking about the existing stipend positions, correct?
Yes. So they exist.
Right.
However, it's my understanding that those positions do not currently exist in the operating budget.
Right. And if the warrant articles fail,
we don't have
the funding for the Tech 1 and 2 positions that we already have.
Right.
And we could, if the funding were restored in the budget for those, we could fund those stipends even if the article fails, because the article has nothing to do with those positions. I just wanted to make that clarification.
Okay, yes,
Yep.
yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I see no other comments or hands up or anyone coming off mute, so I'll call the vote. Let's run it through. Mr. Burke.
No.
Mr. Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Sun.
No.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
Ms. Forty.
No.
Mr. Taylor.
Aye.
Let's see, Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
And I am also an aye. That passes 5-3-0. Okay. Any further questions on school budget updates? We have some time remaining, and Dr. Jetty, we did receive a cost per pupil that I believe was going to be presented this evening. Did you want to mention that tonight?
Sure. If you give me a second, I'll try to present again and see if I can get that up.
Thank you.
So Ms. Flynn was helpful in pulling this information together. I'm going to actually bring us all the way back to the year 2012, 2013, which is located down here in the lower right. And basically what we've done is taken a look at our comparison group, our peer cohort, and we've broken out what the per pupil expenditures are at the elementary, middle, and high school level. And then you see the last column is actually the average per pupil expenditure for the school district. one thing to keep in mind is that these are the figures that the DOE tracks, and these are the only figures that could be used to compare one school district to another, because they normalize it through a formula to make sure that you can compare from one district to another district. There are things like, transportation, for example. If you have a large regional school district, transportation costs are much higher than they are in a single town district like ours that measures, 3 miles by 7 miles. Our ability to run buses around is a little bit different than, say, the Conval Regional School District, which is made up of a lot of towns and a lot of square miles to run buses around. So, going back to 2012 and 2013, at the top of it, you can see what the state averages were, and then you can see what Litchfield was spending. And for comparison purposes, I took the overall average from the state and compared it to Litchfield's average, and I just did a ratio. And so back at that time, we were spending 90.1% of the state average. So a couple of things to point out: that we were under the state average in per pupil expenditure. And then you can take a look and you can compare to other districts. A few things to point out: a district like Bedford, which is much larger than us, does spend less, mainly because of economy of scale. When you take thousands of students, your ability to spread the expenditure across all of those students is greater than it is than in a smaller district like us. You'll also notice that there are other small districts in here which spend a lot of money. Sunapee, which is a small district like us, was spending quite a bit more. Moulton Borough spending quite a bit more. Hopkinton spending more, and Bow spending more. So those are other factors to keep in mind. If you work your way up through the charts, you can see here's 2013-14 just above it. We're still at 90.7% under the average. In 14-15, we're at 91.9%. And in 15-16, we're at whatever number is under the window that I can't see, but it's still under the state average. Coming over to the first column, then down to the bottom, 16-17, you can see that we now are at 95.6% of the average, so we're closing in on it. In the next year, we're at 97.8%, and then at 97.2% for the most recent year that data is available. And I thought it was important to discuss this because, it was mentioned that our per pupil expenditures are increasing, and they are, as are the states and as are every other district around us. It costs more to educate students each year. And I think it's also important to realize that we still are below the state averages, and that, we're doing the best we can. The board has committed to trying to improve education in the school district. We've been paying attention to salaries and benefits and making sure that we can attract and retain quality teachers. Those things cost money in order to do. But it's really not this escalating spiked curve that is out of control spending. You can see that we are spending less than state average. And then if you took a look at how we are doing as a state, we're a better than average district. Our test scores, again, that allow us to compare from one district to another, place us above the state averages. So I think there's a case that can be made that we're spending wisely and are getting good results for the money that we are spending. So the board has been committed to the investment in like the one-to-one technology and so forth. Hence, you're going to see that gap is narrowing a little bit, but it certainly is not an out of control massive spike. So I'd love to take questions if there are any, or comments that people have on that chart.
Question from me: how often is this produced? When can we expect the current year?
So we submit our paperwork into the state by September, and then the state will churn it out. So sometimes these reports lag. I believe they're usually available in January. I say usually because with the COVID year being what it is,
Sure.
Who knows if reports will be delayed? But it does take time for them to run it through the formula and normalize it. So there is a delay in that.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions from the committee?
No, I find this really helpful. Thank you, Dr. Jetty. To see, because sometimes we're very focused, rightfully so, on just Litchfield, on our district, and we're seeing the increase, right, in spending. But to see it in a state context, and it really underscores more of it is costing more year to year to educate our students. So I think this is helpful to see that there's a context in which these expenditures occur. So thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other thoughts from the committee? Hearing none. Thank you for the presentation. This was helpful.
Great. You're welcome.
All right, moving into our next agenda item this evening, I put a line item on for budget hearing preparation, just so for everyone's notice, we are taking the next couple of weeks off due to the holidays. We have Thursday the 24th off, as well as the 31st due to the holiday schedules and where Thursdays fall this particular year. So our next committee meeting is scheduled for Thursday, January 7th. The vision for that meeting is to perform final votes to the extent that we can, right? I'll get direction from zoning as well as libraries, so we have those final numbers, and to go through the warrant articles and make our recommendation or not recommend based upon tax caps and other factors. Leading from that meeting will be our budget hearing. Now, when we talked about kind of the logistics of this earlier in 2020, when we were putting together our plan for the upcoming year, I know there was some conversation about the 14th Thursday or the 16th on a Saturday. It was the will of the committee to proceed on a Thursday. Just confirming that's still the case.
Yep.
Yes, everyone's okay with that? In light of COVID, right, and how we're going to be addressing the budget hearing as well as deliberative sessions, I guess a question for Mr. Leary, has the board made any decisions on the format of how deliberative will be run this year?
We have not addressed it, but I'm assuming it'll be coming up soon.
Yeah. So I don't know if the committee has any thoughts on this, or if we're going to run it like in past years, which is at the CHS auditorium. Historically, there's been, unfortunately, very low turnout, right? But as we all know, that's true. And we can space accordingly, or would this be a virtual event? I really don't know how best to run this, and I'm looking for guidance from the committee.
If I could just chime in for a second, I do think consulting with the moderator would be important. I think format is something that the moderator has purview on. And when we planned for the public meeting that we had back in September, we chose to move from the auditorium to the gymnasium.
Right.
If you think about just the cubic feet of air available in the gymnasium is much greater. There are doors directly to the outdoors, so you can not only have the ventilation system working, but you can open those doors to bring fresh air in. And it seemed to work pretty well. The bleachers provide, I think, a little bit more flexibility than the auditorium seating because of the way they're laid out. It's just a different feel of getting in and out of the seating. And you still have the entire gym floor. I mean, if you did have a massive turnout, you could just set chairs up on the gym floor too. So I would just encourage people to think about the gym as probably a better setting. Now that we know that transmission of the virus through hard surfaces is really not an issue. There's actually no documented cases of somebody getting the COVID from touching a chair, touching a table. I know we're wiping everything down. That's good for the common cold. So it's keeping us healthier, but that's not how the COVID's transmitting. It's all about air. And so I would encourage you to think about the gym, and I think the moderator is doing the same.
That's a great recommendation. Thank you. For my own reference, I don't recall, is the moderator available for the budget hearing, or is it just deliberative? It's just deliberative, correct?
Usually deliberative, yes.
Just deliberative. Yeah. Okay. So
I
with that being
thought he was
said,
at ours. I could be wrong, but I thought he attended ours also, but I could be wrong.
yeah. So I think with that, then we should validate the availability of the gymnasium on the 14th.
Yes.
Michelle, is that something I can coordinate with you on?
Yes, I think I already booked it for the gym, but I will check tomorrow and make sure.
Okay. Yeah, just so we can have that placeholder, that'd be super helpful.
Mr. Chair, I think the other piece of that is, the virtual format, that because I think we are going to have, we want to make sure we provide that opportunity for people that may not feel comfortable coming into the gymnasium. And so whatever tools that we're going to use to do that, whether it's WebEx or other mediums, I think we just want to make sure we have that buttoned up as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we have LCTV. Russ, I see you in the town hall. We have Mr. Burnell, IT director. Just, by point of reference, are there any technical issues with proceeding with budget hearing on the 14th? Should the gym be available from your perspective?
No, Mr. Chairman, as a straight up broadcast event, it would be quite straightforward and simple for LCTV to broadcast.
Fantastic.
If the committee wants to go with a hybrid model where there's participation from remote participants, that would be a little more challenging. That's something Mr. Brunel and I could work out the details for. We would just need to know what the committee's will is as far in advance as possible so that we can get all the loose ends tied up.
Yeah, I know there's been some requests about kind of ironing this out. My vision is to follow the will of the Board of Selectmen and how they intend to run deliberative session, right? That's my goal. But understanding the budget hearing comes first, I'd love as much public participation in the process as possible. I'm not sure on the logistics of that if we do host it in the auditorium. So I would defer to both yourself and Mr. Burnell to just let us know whether it is possible to make that happen.
Sure. And a broadcast from the auditorium, no problem. We can do that.
The public input part, though.
Yeah, the remote public input part will be a challenge. We'll have to consider that if that's the direction that you guys want to go.
Yeah, what does the committee think?
Mr. Chairman, I'll reach out to Troy and I'll find out what their plans are for this and have them send it to the budget committee.
Now, I'm obviously going to advocate for whatever makes it accessible to a number of people. And if we have a hard time with interfacing, say, remote, if there's a possibility to designate somebody who that can read text messages or emails and have them be like the interface or something, so people can still get their message in even if you can't see them on the screen. So I trust that our LCTV and IT department can come up with something that would meet everybody's needs, even if it is a little unorthodox.
Good.
I agree.
Perfect.
Yeah, bottom line, we'll figure it out.
All right. Excellent.
So there obviously many communities are trying to figure this out. There are some provisions that were put forth in HB 1129, which provides for virtual sessions of annual meeting or deliberative, depending on what people are. I can send you, Mr. Chair, there was finally some guidance that was put out by the New Hampshire Municipal Association as far as how that might get run. Obviously, we have to deal with the budget hearing first, but this is a bigger issue that many towns are trying to figure out what is the best way to be accessible to as many people, to have that public input in a way that meets the legal standard for the state. So it is very tricky. And I think we need to be careful, and I think it's good that Mr. Leary is going to talk to Mr. Brown, and we might even have to bring in legal counsel a little bit on this to just make sure that everything is the way that it's supposed to be. Because the last thing we'd want is to do something in a way that's not kosher and then get something invalidated.
Mr. Chairman, Chairman Weber just chimed in that we're waiting for direction from the Secretary of State.
Okay. So hopefully by January 7th, right, we'll have a little bit of direction for the following week. But at this point, if we can have the the gymnasium reserved, at least so we're good to go from that standpoint, I think we'll be in good shape.
That's a good idea.
All right. Thank you. And thank you, Mr. Weber, who's listening in. All right, anything else from the committee this evening? Moving into member input, new business.
So the Facilities Improvement Committee for the school district did meet yesterday, or I don't know, the days are all blending together. So Dr. Jetty and Mr. Isbicki talked about most of it, but we did do a tour of the new entryway at LMS. That was great to see in person. So if you have the opportunity to even just drive by, the entire look of the building is different and way more secure and wonderful for our students. So that was great to see. And more to come in January. So thank you.
If I may, you're missing the important part, which is.
Am I allowed to say it?
Yes. Tell them.
It came in under budget. So the entryway project at the middle school came in under budget. It's not 100% complete. There's some aesthetic things that were laid out in Mr. Isbicki's business administrator report. Was actually pretty detailed but functionally, it's all laid out. And it was under budget, which is fantastic.
And we filed the paperwork today for the substantial completion, and they told us the check was in the mail. So $100,000 coming back to the school district toward that project. So yeah, it's wrapped up nicely. So the budget committee should know, under budget, on time, and all the funding is coming back. So
thank you for that update. All right, shifting gears, public input, please.
Mr. Chair, there are no public members that have joined.
Thank you, Mr. Brunel. And with that, we'll move into a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Leary.
Second.
Second by Ms. Douglas. We'll do a roll call vote, please. Mr. Leary.
Aye.
Mr. Sun.
Yes.
Ms. Douglas.
Yes.
Ms. Forty.
Happy holidays.
Mr. Taylor. Yes. Mr. Burke.
Yes.
Mr. Hayes.
Yes.
And I am also an aye. That carries 8-0-0. All right, January 7th is our next committee meeting. We'll start that meeting at 7 p.m. for voting. And with that, happy holidays, everyone. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks.
Christmas.
Bye now.
Stay safe.